In the last class, we talked about stress and strain relationship. We said that for a fluid, shear stress tau or tau ij, where I is not equal to j in general, or for 2 dimensions we can say tau xy, which is the shear component. Let me write it. Tau ij, where I is not equal to j, is the shear component, of the stress tensor. In 2 dimensions, this is tau xy, and also tau yx. Later on we will see how these are related, tau xy and tau yx, but let us not go into that right now. We said that this is proportional to du by dy in 2 dimensions, where we are talking about a geometry which looks something like this. Velocity is a function of y, where y is the vertical direction and x is the horizontal direction. Okay, and we also said that the proportionality constant is mu for a Newtonian fluid. So this is all true for a Newtonian fluid, that the shear stress tau xy or tau yx is proportional to du by dy. This happens only for Newtonian fluids. Okay. Also, earlier I also told that for solids, the stress strain graph looks like that, and it breaks, the material breaks at certain point, and this is the linear portion up to here, which is also known as Hooke's law, where sigma is proportional to epsilon, where epsilon is strain and sigma is stress. It may be normal stress, then epsilon is normal strain, or it can be shear stress, then epsilon is shear strain. In case of fluids, because epsilon continues to change, there is a continuous deformation. Therefore, plotting sigma versus epsilon has no meaning in fluids. What we plot is epsilon dot, which is strain rate, how the strain is changing with time, versus epsilon. And we said that for Newtonian fluids, this is a straight line. So how is this strain rate same as du by dy? I did not discuss this, so I'll discuss it now. Let's say we consider a layer of a fluid which is being sheared. Let's say the velocity at the bottom of this layer, the velocity at the bottom is, let's say, u, and at the top is, let's say, u plus delta u in x direction. And let's say this distance between the two layers is delta y. Let's say in time delta t, an element of fluid which looked like this deforms into an element looking like this. then the strain is defined as this angle here, theta. If we consider a very small time delta t in which this happens and a very small width delta y, so we are in the limit delta t approaching 0 and delta y approaching 0. We can define strain as almost equal to tan theta, which is equal to the difference in velocities between the layers, which is delta u, times the time delta t which has passed, that is the distance this distance is delta u times delta t. So speed times time, that gives us the distance which the top portion, the top corner of this element travels in time delta t. And tan theta will be this distance divided by the vertical height, which is delta y. Okay. And if this delta theta, if this theta is very small, you can also denote it by delta theta. Is the instantaneous change in the angle. Let us call it delta theta. Now let us take delta t to the left hand side. And let us apply the limit that delta t approaches 0 and delta y approaches 0, so that we are talking about a point, essentially an infinitesimally small element we are talking about, so that we define our strain at every point in the fluid. Therefore, taking the limits, delta t approaches 0 and delta y approaches 0, we get theta dot or d theta by dt, which we are calling strain rate, or epsilon dot. This is equal to du by dy. So saying that stress is proportional to strain rate is same as the statement that stress is proportional to du by dy in this case. Okay, now we'll discuss different kinds of rheologies. If we plot stress versus strain rate graph here, tau versus epsilon dot, we just said that for a Newtonian fluid it is a straight line passing through origin. So it is a Newtonian fluid. Now you may have a yield stress to the fluid, which we have discussed in the last class. Let's say it takes tau naught stress, this much amount of stress, for the fluid to start flowing, to start behaving like a fluid. And let's say after that it follows a straight line. This kind of fluid is known as Bingham plastic. Also there can be fluids, if you plot the apparent viscosity, it decreases with time. So basically from here, from this formula, you can see that viscosity is the formula that we wrote here. Tau yx is mu times du by dy. Du by dy is the strain rate. So viscosity is the slope of this graph, tau versus epsilon dot. So if you take the slope of this graph, tan theta, it gives you the viscosity. So for air, let's say if this is the graph, for water it will look like that, for honey it will look like that, and so on. Okay. Now there can be fluids whose apparent viscosity decreases with stress or strain rate. That can be shown like this. Sorry for the waviness. Okay. And there can be fluids. So these kind of fluids are known as shear thinning fluids. Also they are known as pseudoplastics. There can be fluids whose viscosity increases with strain rate or stress. They look like this. They are known as dilatant fluids or shear thickening fluids. So the shear thickening fluids, if I have to give some example, uh, corn starch is a shear thickening fluid. You might have seen some videos or might have experimented with this. If you dissolve some corn starch in water and make a paste, um, and you try to hit it, uh, if you strike it very fast, it acts like a solid. But if you dip your finger slowly inside that fluid, it is very easy to do so. So if you are applying a small stress, then the viscosity is small. If you apply a large stress on the fluid, the viscosity also becomes very high. So these are known as dilatant fluids. I'll write the example here. Cornstarch paste. Okay. So such fluids are also used in bulletproof vests. So that is, it is easier to handle. It acts like a fluid at normal stress values, but if a bullet hits it, it acts like a solid. Shear thinning fluids, some examples are paint. Paint is a shear thinning fluid. If you apply high shear to it, it thins down. So viscosity decreases at high shear rates or high shear stresses. But at low shear values, it is thick. So paint normally looks thick. It looks like it is very viscous. But when you apply it on a wall using a brush which applies high shear stresses, it thins down. So paints. Also blood is shear thinning fluid. Then Bingham plastic, we gave an example in the last class. Toothpaste is a Bingham plastic. So this is just for some information, the different kinds of fluids. Also here, it's not that all the yield stress fluids which have a yield stress, which act like a solid below a certain threshold of stress and act like a fluid above a certain stress, It is not that all of them are Bingham plastics. There can be a combination of this yield stress nature and shear thinning or thickening nature. Or there can be various other rheologies. Everything you can imagine on this plot. All right. Now, although this is not a part of this course, it is assumed that you would have learned this in your basic fluid mechanics course. We'll talk a little bit about fluid statics. So that, just to recap this statics part. Now, what is the stress tensor for a static fluid element? If you have, let's say, some water in a glass and you take an element inside this glass of water, element of fluid, what is this stress state? Tau. So let me write it for a two-dimensional element, or let me write it for a three-dimensional element. Tau zx, tau zy, tau zz. So how can we simplify this stress tensor further for a static fluid element? So we have already seen that for a static fluid element, shear stress components are zero, because it is the definition of a fluid that it flows under a shear stress. This is not true for yield stress fluids always, but for a pure fluid which acts only like a fluid, this is true. So all these components are zero. Now let me write and tau zz. What about these other components? Now the way we have defined the stress tensor, we said that it is proportional to gradient of velocities. In the last class, or in the last class, I told that stress tensor, it is proportional to del u plus del u transpose. So if there are no velocities, then all of these are zero. But there are additional forces on this element. So that we'll consider now. The complete stress tensor for a fluid element is given by this term. Okay, so if I have to write the exact equality here, tau is equal to mu times this for a Newtonian fluid. Let me denote the complete stress tensor by sigma, that is equal to the pressure contribution plus this contribution. So pressure appears all the time, even in the static state, but this tau appears only when there is a flow. So that appears when there is dynamics, and for static case only pressure appears. So how does the pressure term look like here? It looks like this, where I is the identity matrix or identity tensor, which is given by this matrix or this tensor here in its matrix representation. What does this mean? So why do we have this minus p here? What is the meaning of that? So let us see the element. Let us zoom into the element. By default, the stress direction is taken as the outward normal in the positive directions. Okay. So let us see only the positive directions for now. This is tau xx. If we take the first component only, then that is tau xx, and minus p times this identity tensor, this gives you the first minus p. Therefore the total sigma xx will be minus p plus tau xx. So you have additional minus p here. So for historical reasons, pressure is considered to be acting on a surface. Therefore, because we have considered the direction of stress to be in the positive x direction, and for historical reasons, as I said, pressure is considered to be acting on the surface. Therefore, in this direction, in the positive x direction, the pressure contribution is minus p, where that is p. Therefore, you have this negative sign in this term. Okay, so this is the total stress acting on a fluid element, which is a combination of both the pressure contributions and the viscous stress contribution. This tau is also known as viscous stress. Because it appears when you have a viscosity and when there is a flow. All right. So if we have to write the sigma tensor for a static fluid, then what will remain here is just minus p, minus p, minus p, and 0, 0, 0 everywhere else. So this is the final stress state for a static fluid element. Also given that, yeah, this is the general scenario. This is also the Pascal's law. Right now we have not proved it. We just said that all sigma xx, sigma yy, and sigma zz are equal to minus p. Why is this p coefficient same in all the directions? We will discuss that now. So let us take any arbitrary shaped volume inside a glass of water. By arbitrary shape, I mean let us choose some regular shape so that it is easier to derive equations for that. Let us choose two faces to be aligned in the x and y directions, and a third direction which is a side of this triangle, and the angle here is arbitrary. Let's take it as theta, and this is our triangular element, triangular or prismatic element. Now let us assume that in the x direction, in the y direction, and on this face, P1, P2 and P3 pressures are acting. We are not assuming them to be the same. They are different, let us say. And let us also assume that this element is infinitesimally small, so that we are essentially talking about a point. So what we just said here is equivalent to saying that let us consider a point. Let's assume that the length of the sides of this triangle approach 0. So on this point, the pressure in the x, y and this arbitrary direction are different. Let us assume that for now. And let us write a force balance. Because this is in equilibrium inside a static fluid, so we can write uh, equations of equilibrium, which are given by summation of forces in x direction will be 0, summation of forces in the y direction will be 0, and z also will be 0. Let us take a 2D element for now. Also let us assume that the area of the left face of this triangle is A1, area of the bottom face is A2, and area of that slant face is A3. So the first equation, sigma fx equal to 0, that gives us P1 times A1 and then a component of P3 A3. Okay, what will that be? P3 A3, that is the force acting on that side, and what component of it is in the x direction, that we can write here. This angle here is theta, therefore that will be sine theta. Okay, that is equal to 0. Similarly, summation of forces in the y direction, that we can write P2 A2 minus P3 A3 cos theta, that should be equal to 0. Let's call them 1 and 2. So let us write 1, the first equation. Let us further write A3 in terms of A1. From this triangle we can see that A1 by sine theta is A3, or A3 sine theta is A1. So we can write A1 as A3 sine theta. Similarly, here we can write A2 as A3 cos theta. So you can see that sine theta, A3 will cancel out from here, and we get P1 equal to P3. Similarly, from 2 we get P2 equal to P3. So this means that P1, P2 and P3 are all equal, and we chose an arbitrary angle. So it means that all the pressures in all the directions are same, whatever theta you take. So at a point, the stress state in static condition is isotropic. So we can say as a conclusion that for a static fluid, the stress is isotropic. Okay, in all the directions it is the same. Therefore we can write that sigma looks like this. This is known as Pascal's law. All right. Now we'll write some general equations of hydrostatics. Again, just to recap. Maybe you already know this. Let's say you want to find pressure in a vessel which is open to atmosphere. Let's say atmospheric pressure is P0, and you want to find the pressure in this container. This container is, let's say, filled with water, and at height h from the surface of the water you want to find the pressure at this point. So all of you may know this. It is P0 plus the density of water times the gravitational acceleration times h. There is gravity g and this is stationary. Now we'll derive this formula, how this rho gh comes. So let us again take an element. This time let us do it in 3 dimensions for a change. Let's say this is x direction, this is y direction, that is z direction. Now let's also assume that gravity acts in the z direction, negative z direction, so that we can derive that formula. Now because we are talking about hydrostatics, therefore we can apply equations of equilibrium, which are summation fx is 0, summation fy is 0. So all the forces, the resultant in the y direction, x direction and the z direction, the resultant of all forces are 0 in these individual directions. Now let's write the forces. By now we know that the only forces acting on this cubical element are cubical or non-cubical, doesn't matter. These are pressure forces and the force of gravity. The only place where force of gravity appears is for the entire cube at its center of gravity, that is mg, the mass times gravity, mass of the fluid element. Okay, let's say the size, the width in each direction, they are delta x, delta y and delta z. Then mg can also be written as density of the fluid times the volume of this element, which is delta x, delta y, delta z times g. We will use this later on, that's why I have written this. So let's write this sigma fx equal to 0 in terms of pressure forces. let's say the pressures acting here are on the left face. There is some pressure P at y equal to 0, and here some pressure is acting P at y equal to delta y. So for x direction we need to consider forces in this direction. Let us show that in blue color for that direction, for the x direction. This is pressure at x equal to 0, and this is pressure at x equal to delta x. So you can see we are using this convention for the direction of pressure, that pressure is positive when it acts on the surface. So it is towards the surface. Okay. Similarly, in z direction you have pressure on the surface here and on the surface here at the bottom. Okay. Now let's write sigma fx equal to 0. That is P at x equal to 0 times the area of that face, which is delta y times delta z. This is the force on the back face, as you can see here. Then that should be equal to pressure at x equal to delta x, delta y, delta z. Okay, this is the first equation, which we can simplify further. Let us multiply both sides by delta x. That will give the total volume, and that will cancel out from both the sides. And if we want to write a differential equation for this, for a infinitesimally small element, we can divide this by delta x, and we can say that pressure does not change in the x direction, it remains constant. In other terms, the derivative of pressure with respect to x is 0. As you can see, in the y direction also we are going to get the same thing. We can write pressure at y equal to 0 times delta x delta z is equal to pressure at y equal to delta y delta x delta z, which gives dou p by dou y equal to 0. For some of you who are not familiar with this symbol here, this is for partial derivative, because here pressure depends on all the directions x, y and z in general. In these cases, in this particular case, for fluid statics, pressure does not depend on x and y, it only depends on z, as we will see now. But in general it depends on all the directions. Therefore we use this partial derivative symbol. Okay, which means that we are only looking at the change with x direction in this case, and in this case we are looking at change only with the y direction. So I'll call this symbol dou p by dou x, or dou p dou x. I'm not calling it del because this symbol is also known as del and this symbol is known as delta. Therefore I'll call it dou, which is a standard. Alright. Now let us write it for the z direction as well. Pressure at z equal to 0 which is in the vertical direction, this one, times the surface area on which it is acting, delta x times delta y. This is equal to both the forces acting downwards, which are pressure at z equal to delta z, delta x, delta y, and plus the mg force, which is density times delta x, delta y, delta z, g. Now what we'll do is we'll divide and multiply by delta z in both these terms and take them on one side. So what we get here is minus rho times delta x, delta y, delta z, g is equal to P minus P z equal to 0 divided by delta z. Now let us and this is multiplied with delta x, delta y, delta z. We can cancel out these three terms from both the sides. Now what we get is dou p by dou z, which is the right hand side, is equal to minus rho g. So if you have gravity in a certain direction, then you can use that direction in the denominator instead of z. So from here you get pressure as minus rho g z, which means the pressure decreases as you increase z. So in this case of this liquid, let's say the z direction is this. So as you decrease z, pressure increases because you are going down, the pressure is increasing, and we have written plus rho g h. H is the negative height, so there was a minus sign here and a minus sign in h, that became plus ultimately. Okay, so this is the equation of hydrostatics. Now let me ask you a question on hydrostatics. Let's say this is a common question. Many of you may know the answer. Let's say there is a pipeline which is connected to a water source, and now the static state has been reached, the equilibrium has been reached. This pipeline is connected to various tanks of different shapes and sizes. Let's say the first tank looks like that, the second tank looks like this, and the third tank looks like that. And you are told that in the first tank, this is the water level, and the water is filled everywhere and all the tanks are connected. What is the water level in the other two tanks? You are also told that there is gravity g. It is the normal condition on earth. What will be the water level in the other two tanks, tanks B and C? Now you can guess the answer. We just derived that pressure depends only on height z and nothing else. Okay, so the pressure at same height is the same because pressure depends on z only. Therefore the pressure at these points in this tube is same, at the same level, And again, if you see, this is height h, let's say, from this point. Therefore the pressure here has to be atmospheric pressure, has to reach the atmospheric pressure. Similarly, it will reach the same atmospheric pressure in the same height h, and here also it will reach the atmospheric pressure in the same distance in the z direction, or the height h. Therefore the water level will be same at the same height in all three cases. So this is it for now. We'll discuss some problems on hydrostatics, and we'll start hydrodynamics or fluid dynamics from the next class.